Tasha Montgomery had built her name through grit and instinct. She wore the badge because it felt like destiny, not coincidence. In the small Illinois town where everyone knew everyone, her short hair, sharp bone structure, and calm authority made her both respected and feared. Beneath the surface, though, lived a solitude no one saw. Only her partner, Nina Caldwell, ever caught glimpses of it. Nina was her opposite in almost every way: lighter skin, gentle voice, hair always in neat twists. She carried herself with warmth that softened the uniform's edges. Married to Marcus Caldwell, a reliable neighborhood electrician, she seemed to embody balance and devotion. For 5 years, she and Tasha had patrolled side by side, two halves of one rhythm. They'd faced the worst of the streets together, argued, laughed, and trusted each other with their lives. But even the strongest partnerships have cracks. Tasha's came in the shape of Marcus. She couldn't say when admiration had turned into desire. Maybe it was during one of those Friday cookouts Nina loved hosting. Maybe it was when Marcus stayed behind to help her clean up while Nina tucked the kids in. What began as polite conversation turned into lingering glances, the kind that felt dangerous even before they crossed any line. One night the air between them changed. When his hand brushed hers, she froze, then didn't pull away. "This isn't right," she whispered. But Marcus just looked at her, and in his eyes, she saw the same conflict burning back. That moment became the first of many, quick touches, stolen hours, whispered promises they both swore would end soon. It never did. Every time Tasha saw Nina at the precinct, the guilt hollowed her out. Nina would talk about her marriage, the kids, the stress of long shifts. Sometimes she mentioned how Marcus had grown distant. "I think something's off," she said once during patrol at 8:40 p.m., her voice heavy. "He's hiding something." Tasha's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "You're both just tired," she replied, eyes on the road. "Maybe you need a weekend away." But Nina's expression told her she wasn't convinced. She wasn't naive, and the suspicion in her eyes was growing. Over the next few weeks, Marcus began avoiding Tasha. He canceled meetings, answered texts late, and when they did meet, he seemed agitated. "She's watching me," he said once, pacing. "I can't keep lying." "You think I can?" Tasha shot back. "Every time I see her, I feel like I'm suffocating." She meant it. Yet when he touched her, every moral boundary vanished. By early March, the tension between Nina and Marcus was obvious. He left home earlier, returned later, and Nina's faith in him began to crumble. Tasha watched helplessly as the woman she loved as a sister slowly unraveled because of the man she couldn't let go of. On April 3, 9:26 p.m., Tasha sat alone in her car outside Marcus's house, phone in hand, debating whether to end it. Her thumb hovered over his name. She wanted to tell him it was over, that she couldn't keep destroying herself, or Nina. But when she finally called, the sound of his voice shattered her resolve. "You shouldn't be here," he murmured when he opened the door. "I know," she whispered, already stepping inside. They spent hours together that night. When Tasha left, she realized there was no going back. The guilt was permanent now. Nina's absences at home grew longer too. Late nights at the station, extra reports, long drives alone. She confided more in Tasha, unaware she was confessing to the very person who had betrayed her. "It feels like he's fading away," she admitted one evening, rubbing her temple. "I don't even know who I'm married to anymore." Tasha forced a reassuring smile. "Maybe you're both just disconnected. It happens." But inside, she was breaking. Weeks later, Marcus stopped answering completely. When Tasha finally cornered him outside his truck one evening, he looked exhausted. "It has to stop," he said. "She's asking too many questions." "So, that's it," she snapped. "You disappear?" "I'm trying to fix my marriage." Her voice cracked. "There's nothing left to fix." For days, she barely slept. The city lights blurred as she drove home after midnight shifts, her thoughts circling the same truth: Nina would find out. And when she did, the fallout would destroy all three of them. The tension finally snapped the night of June 17th. Tasha was sitting in her car outside the precinct, phone pressed to her ear. Marcus's voice trembled. "Nina's missing," he said. "She left for work yesterday morning. Never came home." "What?" Tasha's pulse spiked. "You mean she just disappeared?" "I've called everyone. Her phone's dead. It's been 26 hours. Have you called the police?" "Not yet. I thought maybe she just needed space. But this isn't like her." Tasha's stomach turned cold. "I'm coming over." When she arrived, Marcus was sitting on the couch, staring blankly at his phone. The house felt too quiet. The framed family photos on the wall, Nina's smile, the kids' faces, made Tasha's throat tighten. She'd been inside this home too many times, but tonight it felt foreign, haunted. "She wouldn't just walk away," Tasha said softly. Marcus rubbed his face. "I don't know what to think anymore." The next morning, the search began. Officers, volunteers, neighbors, everyone joined in. Tasha worked beside them, her badge heavy on her chest. She combed through alleys, fields, and abandoned lots, every breath thick with dread. She couldn't look Marcus in the eye. The guilt felt unbearable, like she'd willed this tragedy into existence. On the fourth day, still no trace. Every lead dead. The whispers around the station grew. Tasha could feel eyes on her whenever she entered a room. By the sixth day, June 23rd, 4:52 p.m., a call came through the radio. A body had been found in an old warehouse near the industrial district. Tasha drove there herself. The structure was silent except for the hum of generators and the low voices of officers. Sergeant Williams met her at the door. His expression said everything. "You don't want to see this," he murmured. "I have to," she answered. Inside, the air was cold, thick with metallic stench. Broken glass scattered the floor. Under harsh flashlight beams lay Nina, unrecognizable at first glance. Her uniform was torn, her body mutilated. It wasn't just a killing, it was rage. Tasha couldn't move. The world blurred. Her knees trembled as she whispered Nina's name, but no sound came. The reality shattered whatever strength she had left. Her friend, her partner, the woman she had betrayed, was gone. The precinct fell into chaos. The case consumed everyone. Forensics teams swarmed the scene, gathering fibers, footprints, anything. Detective Raymond Tucker, a quiet but relentless investigator, took the lead. He'd seen brutal cases before, but something about this one felt personal from the start. The violence suggested someone close, someone with emotion behind every blow. Tasha spent that night sitting in her car outside the precinct, hands shaking. She couldn't erase the image of Nina on that cold floor. Every conversation, every lie, echoed back. Marcus's face, the nights they'd shared, it all now looked monstrous. When the questioning began, she knew she'd have to sit across from Tucker and lie again. "Tasha," Tucker said calmly when her turn came, "tell me about Nina's last days." She took a breath. "We worked late shifts together. She'd been distracted. Thought something was wrong at home." "Something like what?" She didn't say much. Just that Marcus felt distant. Tucker watched her carefully. "Anything else unusual? Anyone threatening her?" Tasha hesitated. She wanted to tell him about Marcus's panic, about the affair. But saying it would destroy everything. "No," she said finally. Nina was solid. Focused on work. Tucker's eyes narrowed slightly. "And you too? Any tension between you?" "None," she lied. When she left the room, her uniform felt heavier than ever. The walls seemed to close in. She could feel suspicion already circling. Marcus's interrogation came next. He looked wrecked, unshaven, sleepless, desperate. Tucker's questions cut straight to the affair. "You and Tasha, how long has this been going on?" Marcus looked down. "A few months. But it's over. It had nothing to do with Nina." "Did she know?" "I don't think so." "You don't think or you don't know?" Marcus's silence was answer enough. Tucker pressed harder. "What if she did find out? What if she confronted you?" Marcus's voice broke. "I loved her. I betrayed her, but I'd never hurt her." But the department wasn't convinced. The affair spread like wildfire. By the next morning, everyone knew. The officers who once called Tasha their own now whispered behind her back. Her career, her reputation, her friendships, everything she'd built was unraveling. She tried to keep working, but the stares were unbearable. Every file, every briefing felt like an accusation. She avoided Marcus entirely. She didn't know if she hated him or pitied him. Maybe both. Tucker, meanwhile, wasn't satisfied. Something about the case didn't fit. The violence of the murder was too personal, too frenzied. Affairs lead to betrayal, he told his team, but not this level of rage. Nina's phone was missing, her last calls untraceable. Then a colleague mentioned that she'd been receiving strange messages before she vanished, anonymous, threatening ones. No one knew from who. Tucker ordered a deeper dig into her contacts, and one name caught his attention: Trevor James, an officer from another unit and a longtime friend of Nina's. He'd always been protective of her, maybe too much. Tasha remembered him vaguely, quiet, loyal, but distant. Tucker brought him in for questioning on July 1st at 3:18 p.m. Trevor sat calmly, arms crossed. "We were friends," he said evenly. "She talked to me about Marcus sometimes. I told her to be careful." "What about Tasha?" Tucker asked. "Barely knew her." "You're sure about that?" "I kept my distance." Tucker leaned forward. "Nina suspected her husband was cheating. Did she ever tell you who with?" Trevor looked away. "She thought it was someone from the precinct. She didn't say who." "You didn't ask?" "She said she wanted to find out herself." Tucker watched the subtle twitch in Trevor's jaw. He wasn't convinced. When the man left, he ordered surveillance immediately. That night, Tasha sat in her dark apartment, staring at the ceiling. Her life was unraveling faster than she could control it. Marcus called around 11:07 p.m., his voice shaking. "Someone's following me," he said. "Everywhere I go, I feel eyes." "Marcus, calm down." "I can't. I think whoever killed Nina is watching us." The line went dead. Tasha sat frozen. For the first time, she realized their secret wasn't the only danger lurking. Someone knew everything and was using it. Tasha barely slept that night. Every creak of the apartment made her flinch. Her phone sat on the nightstand, screen lighting up with unanswered messages from Marcus. She didn't reply. At 2:47 a.m., she stood by her window, watching the street outside. A car idled across the road, lights off, engine low. When she looked again, it was gone. The next morning, she showed up at the precinct earlier than usual, hoping work would ground her. It didn't. Conversations fell silent when she entered. Detective Tucker nodded in greeting but didn't hide the scrutiny in his eyes. The whispers about her affair with Marcus had turned the department against her. Once seen as dependable, she now looked like a liability, maybe even a suspect. By 10:32 a.m., Tucker called her into his office again. "We found something," he said, sliding a photo across the desk. It was a still from a security camera 2 blocks from the warehouse where Nina's body had been found. The timestamp read June 17 to 10:14 p.m., the night she went missing. A blurred figure stood near an alleyway, too grainy to identify, but the build looked familiar. "That could be anyone," Tasha said quietly. "Could be," Tucker replied. "Or it could be Marcus." Tasha's throat tightened. "You don't believe he—" "I believe he's hiding something," Tucker interrupted. "And I believe you are too. I've seen what guilt does to people, Officer Montgomery. You can't hold it forever." She wanted to shout that he was wrong, that she'd never hurt Nina. But the words stuck. She could barely convince herself anymore. Later that evening, Marcus called again, voice trembling. "They're tailing me, Tasha. I swear it's not just paranoia." "Who is?" "I don't know. But they know where I go, what I do. I keep seeing the same black SUV. You need to tell Tucker." "I can't. He already thinks I did it. You know what that means, they'll never stop watching me." Tasha's heart pounded. "Then stay at my place tonight," she offered impulsively. Silence stretched, then he whispered, "I'll be there." He arrived close to midnight, looking exhausted and jumpy. His eyes darted to the windows as if expecting someone to appear. They barely spoke, sitting on opposite sides of the couch. For a brief moment, it almost felt like the old days, before guilt consumed everything. But then Marcus said, "Maybe this is karma?" "For what we did?" she asked. "For everything." When she woke the next morning at 6:18 a.m., Marcus was gone. No note, no text. The dread that filled her was different this time, colder, sharper. She dressed, grabbed her keys, and drove straight to his house. The door was locked, lights off. His truck sat in the driveway, keys still in the ignition. She called his phone, no answer. At 8:04 a.m., she walked into Tucker's office again. "Marcus is missing." He looked up, unimpressed. "Maybe he's avoiding questioning." "No," she said firmly. "Something's wrong." He studied her face for a moment, then nodded slowly. "All right, we'll issue a welfare check." Hours passed. The team traced Marcus's phone signal to an abandoned lot near the edge of town, half a mile from the river. His phone was found crushed beneath the dirt, screen shattered. There was no sign of him. By sunset, the tension around the case reached breaking point. Tucker believed Marcus might have fled, fearing arrest. Tasha wasn't sure what to believe anymore. Everything she trusted was collapsing: her integrity, her judgment, her faith in people. She went home, poured a drink, and sat staring at the framed precinct photo on her wall. Nina was there, smiling beside her, unaware of how it would all end. The next few days blurred together. Interviews, evidence checks, late nights filled with caffeine and fear. The warehouse murder had become headline news. Reporters camped outside the station, pressing for answers. Was Officer Montgomery involved in her partner's murder? One headline asked. She didn't bother denying it publicly, it would only make things worse. Tucker kept digging. On July 3rd at 9:10 a.m., he called her into the briefing room. "New lead," he said, pointing at a board filled with photos and phone records. Security footage from a nearby store caught Trevor James, Nina's old friend, driving past the warehouse twice that night. First at 9:57 p.m., again at 10:41 p.m. Tasha frowned. "That doesn't mean anything." "Maybe. But Trevor didn't mention those drives when we questioned him. And now he's ignoring our calls." Tasha's pulse quickened. "You think he killed her?" "I think he's lying," Tucker said. "And people lie for a reason." By noon, a team was sent to locate Trevor. He wasn't at home, and his neighbors said they hadn't seen him in 2 days. The tension inside the precinct was suffocating. Tasha felt it pressing on her chest as she stared at the empty evidence board, at Nina's photo pinned in the center. That night, as rain lashed the streets, she drove aimlessly through the city, haunted by memories. Nina laughing during patrols, Nina's calm voice during tense calls, Nina hugging her after a bad shift. All of it replaced by the image of her broken body in that warehouse. She pulled over at 11:23 p.m., resting her head against the steering wheel. "I'm sorry," she whispered to the dark. The following morning, Tucker received a call. Trevor had been found. He'd been spotted at a motel on the outskirts of town, renting a room under a false name. Officers moved in immediately. When they entered, Trevor was sitting on the bed, half-packed suitcase beside him. His hands were trembling. "You've been avoiding us," Tucker said as he entered. "Mind telling me why?" Trevor stared at him blankly. "You people never listen." "Then make me listen," Tucker said, sitting across from him. Trevor rubbed his temples. "I didn't kill her." "Then why run?" "Because I knew you'd come for me. You always go after the wrong person first." Tucker remained calm. "Tell me what happened." Trevor hesitated, then exhaled shakily. "Nina came to me 2 days before she died. Said she'd found out something she wasn't supposed to. She looked scared. Said she was meeting someone that night to get proof." "Proof of what?" Tucker asked. "She wouldn't say. Only that it would end everything." Tasha, listening from outside the room, felt her stomach twist. "And everything." The phrase echoed painfully. What if Nina had discovered the affair? What if that was the secret she'd been chasing? Trevor continued, voice cracking. "She didn't show up the next day. I went to her house, called her phone, nothing. Then I heard about the body. And I knew they'd come for me. Tucker leaned forward. You said she was meeting someone. Who? Trevor's eyes darted toward the window. I don't know. But his hesitation said otherwise. Tucker caught it instantly. You're lying. Trevor's silence confirmed it. After the interrogation, Tasha cornered Tucker in the hallway. He's hiding something. I know, Tucker said. We're keeping him in custody until we find out what. But by morning, Trevor was gone. The guard on duty claimed he'd requested a restroom break and never returned. No one could explain how he slipped out. Security cameras were conveniently offline between 3:08 and 3:21 a.m. When the news broke, chaos erupted. Tucker slammed his fist on the table. Someone helped him. Check every exit, every vehicle log. Tasha's mind raced. If Trevor was the killer, he was still out there. And if he wasn't, whoever framed him was playing a game that wasn't over yet. Later that day, she received a message from an unknown number. You should have left it alone. She wouldn't have died. Timestamp, July 6 to 2:14 p.m. Her breath caught. She showed it to Tucker immediately, but the number was already deactivated. Could be Trevor, he said grimly. Or someone trying to make you break. By now, sleep was impossible. Every shadow outside her window felt like a threat. At 11:45 p.m., she heard footsteps in the hallway outside her apartment. When she opened the door, no one was there, but an envelope lay on the floor. Inside was a photo of Nina and Tasha together, taken months before the murder, during a precinct charity event. Across the photo, in red marker, liar. The fear that had been simmering finally boiled over. She called Tucker. He's playing with me, she said, voice shaking. Stay put, Tucker ordered. I'll send a car. When the patrol arrived 15 minutes later, the hallway was empty again. No fingerprints, no witnesses. Whoever had been there knew how to move unseen. Over the next 48 hours, new evidence began to surface. Investigators recovered deleted text logs from Nina's cloud account. The last message she'd sent, June 17, 9:58 p.m., was to Trevor. I'm here. Where are you? Tucker's eyes narrowed as he read it. So she was meeting him. Still, the picture didn't fit. Trevor's phone showed no outgoing messages that night. His vehicle's GPS stopped tracking at 10:05 p.m., just before the estimated time of death. Then came the final break. Surveillance footage from a gas station near the motel showed Trevor days later buying cleaning supplies and bleach. When confronted, he confessed in fragments. She wouldn't stop crying, he said through tears. She said she was going to expose them both, Marcus and Tasha. She said they'd betrayed her, that everything she believed in was a lie. Tucker's jaw tightened. And you decided to kill her? Trevor slammed his fists against the table. You don't understand. She was broken. I wanted to save her. She said she wanted to disappear. I just helped her. The room went silent. By 8:37 p.m. that night, the official confession was signed. Trevor had stalked Nina for weeks, convinced she needed his protection. When she discovered the affair, she'd gone to him for advice. But his obsession twisted everything. He lured her to the warehouse, promising to keep her safe, then snapped when she tried to leave. Tucker closed the file with a weary sigh. Case closed, he said quietly. When Tasha heard, she didn't feel relief, only emptiness. The guilt she carried didn't fade, it grew heavier. Trevor might have been the killer, but her betrayal had been the spark. A week later, at 6:12 p.m., she stood outside Nina's grave as the sun dipped behind the trees. The air smelled of cut grass and rain. Marcus was there too, silent, hollow-eyed. They didn't speak. There was nothing left to say. When he finally turned to leave, he whispered, "We did this." She didn't disagree. After the funeral, the town moved on. But Tasha couldn't. Every sound, every face, every quiet street reminded her of Nina. She took leave from the department, claiming exhaustion, though everyone knew it was more than that. Her badge sat untouched on the kitchen counter beside her service weapon. She hadn't picked either up in weeks. At 7:18 p.m. one evening, she received a call from Detective Tucker. "Trevor's hearing is next month," he said. "You should come." Closure helps. There's no closure for this, she murmured. Not for me. Tucker hesitated. You're not the villain here, Tasha. But she didn't believe him. She had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed, and Nina had paid the price. Marcus, too, vanished from public life. He quit his job, sold the house, and moved 2 towns over. They texted once after the trial, briefly, formally. Take care of yourself. That was the last message either of them sent. Still, the nightmares came. Nina's face, the sound of her laughter morphing into a scream. The warehouse. The blood. The guilt. Tasha often woke around 3 a.m., drenched in sweat, convinced she heard Nina's voice calling her name. One night, she drove out to the old precinct lot around 4:27 a.m., parking near the street lamp where she and Nina used to talk between calls. The station was dark, closed for renovation, but the silence felt sacred, haunted, even. She whispered into the still air, "I'm sorry," and for the first time, she allowed herself to cry without restraint. Months passed. Trevor James was convicted on multiple counts: murder, obstruction, unlawful disposal of evidence. His obsession with Nina had been far deeper than anyone knew. Letters recovered from his apartment painted a disturbing picture. He'd followed her for months, collected photos, even recorded her conversations at the station. He saw himself as her savior, convinced she needed to be freed from corruption. In his twisted reasoning, killing her was the only way to preserve her purity. When the verdict was announced, life without parole, Tasha was there. She watched him from the gallery. He didn't look at her, his eyes stayed fixed on the floor. For a moment, she wondered whether he blamed her or pitied her. Maybe both. After court adjourned, Tucker approached her. "You did the right thing showing up," he said quietly. "You faced it." "Facing it doesn't fix it," she replied. Tucker nodded slowly. "No. But it's a start." That evening, November 12th, 7:42 p.m., she sat alone in her apartment with the lights dimmed. Rain tapped softly against the window. She opened an old box labeled personal, photos, case reports, commendation pins, and one small memory card. She slid it into her laptop. The screen filled with images from happier times. She and Nina on patrol, laughing, Marcus grilling in the backyard, all of them at a precinct picnic. They looked like a family. She shut the laptop and sat in silence. The following morning, she called the department and resigned officially. Tucker didn't sound surprised. "You sure?" he asked. "Yeah," she said. "I can't keep carrying a badge that reminds me of what I lost." Her resignation was processed the same afternoon, time-stamped 11:36 a.m. She packed her belongings into a single box and left the building without ceremony. In the months that followed, she moved into a small house near the outskirts of town. The quiet helped at first, but solitude has its own weight. Every evening at 6 o'clock sharp, she walked to the nearby park, sat on the same bench overlooking the lake, and stayed until dusk. Locals sometimes recognized her, the cop from the Caldwell case, but they left her alone. She preferred it that way. Marcus reached out once more, nearly a year after Nina's death. It was 9:02 p.m. when her phone buzzed. His name lit the screen for the first time in months. "I thought you'd changed your number," he said when she answered. "I almost did." He exhaled. "I heard about your resignation. It was time." They spoke for a while, awkward pauses, half-finished thoughts. Marcus told her he'd started working out of state, doing electrical contracts. "I don't sleep much," he confessed. "Neither do I," she said softly. There was silence, then he whispered, "I keep thinking, if I just told her the truth earlier." "She might still be alive," Tasha finished for him. The line went quiet again. Neither spoke for nearly a minute. Finally, Marcus said, "We have to live with it. That's the punishment." When the call ended, Tasha sat staring at her reflection in the dark window. He was right. That was the punishment, knowing Nina's last thoughts had probably been about betrayal. Winter arrived early that year. The lake froze over, and with it came a kind of stillness Tasha hadn't felt before. On December 4th, 6:55 p.m., she visited Nina's grave again. Snow covered the headstones in pale sheets. She brushed the flakes from the engraved name and knelt. "You were the best of us," she whispered. "I failed you. But I'll never forget you." A soft wind passed through the cemetery, rustling the trees, and for a moment it felt like Nina was there, watching, listening, forgiving. Tasha stood slowly and looked at the horizon. The sun had dipped below the clouds, casting an amber hue over the snow. For the first time in months, she breathed without the weight crushing her chest. She walked back to her car, started the engine, and let the heater hum quietly. Life, she realized, doesn't stop for the broken. It just keeps moving. In the following year, she began volunteering at a crisis support center for police families, helping spouses, children, and officers dealing with trauma. She avoided questions about her past, but sometimes the younger officers recognized her name and whispered. She didn't correct them. Her silence was her peace. One night, while closing the center at 9:41 p.m., she found a letter slipped under the door. It was unsigned, written in neat handwriting. "Forgiveness doesn't erase guilt. It teaches you to live with it." And she froze. Nina had died long before anyone could have written this. It was likely from Marcus, or maybe one of Nina's relatives. Still, the message pierced her. She folded it carefully and tucked it into her jacket pocket. Days turned into weeks. Slowly, the edges of grief dulled, replaced by quiet acceptance. The memories remained, some unbearable, some beautiful, but she learned to live among them instead of running. 2 years later, on the anniversary of Nina's death, June 17, 8:47 p.m., Tasha drove back to the warehouse for the first time since that night. It had been cleaned, boarded up, and abandoned once more. The building stood silent, the air thick with old ghosts. She stepped inside with a flashlight, each footstep echoing against the concrete. She paused at the exact spot where Nina had been found. For a moment, she thought she heard footsteps behind her, but it was only the wind slipping through the cracks. She knelt down, tracing a faint outline on the floor where the investigator's tape had once been. "You deserved better," she whispered. "We all did." When she stood and turned to leave, something caught her eye, a single wilted daisy wedged between two broken tiles. She picked it up, heart pounding, unsure who had left it. Maybe Marcus had come before her, maybe Tucker, or maybe it didn't matter. She placed the flower gently on the floor and walked out, letting the door swing shut behind her. Outside, the night air was cool. Fireflies flickered in the field beyond the warehouse. She breathed in deeply, the smell of summer grass and rust filling her lungs. For the first time since Nina's death, she felt free, not from guilt, but from denial. She couldn't undo what she'd done, but she could choose who she became after. Back home, at 10:22 p.m., she sat at her desk and began to write. Not a report or confession, but a letter to Nina's children. She told them about their mother's courage, her kindness, her humor, the way she always stayed calm during chaos. She didn't mention the affair or the betrayal. Some truths, she decided, didn't belong to the living. She ended the letter simply, "Your mother was my partner, my friend, and my compass. I lost my way without her, but I found it again because of who she was." When she sealed the envelope, she felt lighter. By dawn, the first sunlight spilled through her window. The clock reads 6:01 a.m. She brewed coffee, watched the light touch the rooftops, and whispered, "Thank you." Life didn't forgive easily, but it continued. Tasha never returned to police work. She spent her remaining years helping others recover from loss, speaking quietly at seminars about moral courage and integrity, never once mentioning names or dates, only lessons. She often said, "A badge can protect others, but it can't shield you from yourself." Sometimes, when she passed a patrol car on the road, she'd glance at the flashing lights and feel a faint ache, a reminder of who she once was and who she could never be again. Years later, long after Tucker retired and Marcus disappeared from the records, a young officer sorting through archived case files found the Caldwell case report. Scrawled at the bottom of the final page, in faded blue ink, was a handwritten note. "The truth destroys, but it also redeems." No one knew who wrote it, but those who remembered Tasha Montgomery believed it was hers. And somewhere, in that quiet Illinois town where every tragedy eventually became a story, the memory of two partners, one loyal, one flawed, lingered in whispers. Because some betrayals fade, but their echoes never die.